HOA Karen ripped war widow's photo. Didn't know my wife's a military officer. The community center smelled of stale coffee and desperation, a fitting stage for the showdown about to unfold. Karen, the HOA president with a perm as rigid as her opinions, stood at the front, her voice slicing through the murmurs like a knife. "This neighborhood isn't your personal memorial," she snapped, holding up a torn photograph of a soldier, her sneer practically audible. I sat in the back, gripping the edge of my chair, my knuckles white. That photo was my late husband, Michael, killed in action 2 years ago. I'd hung it on my porch to honor him, a quiet tribute to the man who'd given everything. Karen, in her infinite wisdom, decided it cluttered the neighborhood's aesthetic. She'd ripped it down, torn it in half, and now waved it like a trophy. The room spun as I fought the urge to lunge at her. Instead, I took a breath and stood, my military boots heavy on the creaky floor. "That's my husband's photo," I said, voice steady but laced with fury. "You had no right." Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into that smug grin she wore like a badge. "No right, I'm keeping this place respectable. Captain Thompson, your little shrine doesn't fit the HOA guidelines." The crowd gasped, a few whispers rising. They knew me, Captain Sarah Thompson, active duty officer, widow of a war hero. Karen, though, didn't care. She never did. To her, rules were gospel, and compassion was optional. It started innocently enough. When I moved into this quiet suburban cul-de-sac, I wanted a fresh start after Michael's death. The house was small, cozy, a place to rebuild. I'd hung his photo on the porch, next to a small flag, thinking it'd blend into the neighborhood's manicured lawns and picket fences. But Karen, the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek, had other plans. Her first email arrived a week later. "Unauthorized decorations detected. Remove immediately." I ignored it, assuming she'd move on. She didn't. The emails turned into letters, then doorstep visits. Karen would stand there, clipboard in hand, rattling off bylaws like a drill sergeant. "This isn't a cemetery," she'd said once, her voice dripping with disdain. I tried reasoning with her, explaining Michael's sacrifice, but she'd just roll her eyes. "Rules are rules. Sarah, don't make this personal." Personal? It was already personal. She didn't know the half of it. The tension built over weeks. Karen escalated, rallying her HOA minions to nitpick every inch of my property. My mailbox was non-compliant. My garden's flowers were too vibrant. Each complaint felt like a jab at Michael's memory. And I wasn't the only one she targeted. Old Mr. Jenkins got fined for his birdhouse. The Nguyen family's holiday lights were deemed excessive. Karen ruled with an iron fist, and the neighborhood groaned under her reign. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. At the next HOA meeting, I arrived early, hoping to plead my case. As I set up a small display of Michael's medals to share his story, a young woman approached Lila, a quiet neighbor I barely knew. She was fidgeting, her eyes darting nervously. "Sarah," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. It was grainy, but unmistakable Karen, sneaking onto my porch at midnight, yanking Michael's photo down and tearing it with a vicious grin. Lila had caught it on her security camera. "I couldn't stay quiet," she said. "She's gone too far." That video changed everything. I felt a fire ignite in my chest, not just for me, but for everyone Karen had bullied. Lila's courage was a spark, and I wasn't about to let it fizzle out. I shared the video with a few neighbors, and word spread like wildfire. By the next meeting, tonight's meeting, the room was packed, buzzing with outrage. Karen, oblivious, strutted in, ready to lecture us on community standards. That's when she held up the torn photo, and I knew the moment had come. "Respectable," I shot back. Stepping closer, the room fell silent, all eyes on us. "You call sneaking onto my porch and destroying my husband's memory." Respectable Karen's face faltered, but she doubled down. "You're out of line. Sarah, this is about order." Not your sob story, the crowd murmured, some nodding in my favor, others too scared to cross her. I held up my phone. Lila's video queued up. Let's see what everyone thinks of your order. I played the video on the community center's projector. Gasps filled the room as Karen's image flickered across the screen, her hands ripping Michael's photo with glee. The crowd's murmurs turned to shouts. How could you? Someone yelled. Mr. Jenkins stood, shaking. You fined me for a birdhouse. But this is disgusting. Karen's face drained of color, her clipboard trembling in her hands. That's not what it looks like. She stammered. Not what it looks like, I said, my voice rising. You desecrated a war hero's memory because it didn't fit your precious rules. You bullied this entire neighborhood. Karen, but this crosses every line. I turned to the crowd, holding up Michael's medals. This was my husband. He died for this country. And she, I pointed at Karen, thought his memory was trash. The room erupted. Neighbors stood, shouting accusations. The Nguyens recounted their fines. Lila spoke up, her voice shaking but firm, detailing how Karen had threatened her for asking questions. Even Karen's usual allies stayed silent, their loyalty crumbling. Karen tried to regain control, banging her gavel. This is my meeting. Sit down, but no one listened. The tide had turned. Then came the knockout blow. Lila, emboldened, stepped forward with another bombshell. Karen's been skimming HOA funds, she said, holding up bank statements she dug up as the treasurer's assistant. Thousands of dollars, funneled to her personal account. The crowd roared, and Karen's smug facade shattered. She backed toward the door, but I wasn't done. I walked up, inches from her face, and said, You're finished, Karen, and you're going to answer for this. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The HOA board, pressured by the outraged community, voted Karen out that night. The police were called to investigate the embezzlement, and whispers of lawsuits swirled. Karen's name became a cautionary tale, her reputation in tatters. I replaced Michael's photo with a new one, this time in a frame bolted to the porch. The neighborhood rallied around me, leaving flowers and notes of support. Lila became a friend, her quiet bravery a reminder that even the smallest voices can spark change. But the real justice wasn't just Karen's fall, it was the community waking up. We rewrote the HOA rules, prioritizing people over perfection. Mr. Jenkins got his birdhouse back. The Nguyens hung their lights brighter than ever. And I found peace knowing Michael's memory was honored, not just by me, but by a neighborhood that finally stood up. Karen moved away a month later, her house sold under a cloud of shame. I heard she tried starting over in another town, but word travels fast. Her reign of petty tyranny was over, and the bitter taste of her own medicine lingered. I stood on my porch one evening, touching Michael's photo, and whispered, We did it. Love. What do you think was Karen's punishment fair? Should the community have done more? Or was her downfall enough? Share your thoughts below.